Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1236 of the War News stream. And today we have massive news about the Russian forces panicking about a possible attack on Moscow. Also, we've seen a drone shot down at the U.S. consulate in Iraq, and also North Korea is threatening war against the USA for the 50th time. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world. Also, an apology in advance for any sort of interruptions in Matthew's voice call, or my call, that y'all are hearing throughout the stream. Our power went out not too long ago, and for that reason, the internet's still starting to try and get back on its feet. But outside of that, we have been able to hear that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has directly threatened the United States, South Korea, and Japan today with outright war after the United States of America, South Korea, and Japan all conducted a joint military exercise within the area of the Sea of Japan involving a United States Air Force strategic bomber in today's military exercises. At the same time, the North Koreans have also vowed further military support to the Russian Federation, stating that their support for the Russians is unlimited, and we've already been able to hear information so far provided by intelligence sources that it appears that the North Koreans have provided around 12 million high-explosive artillery shells to the Russian Federation at this point. We have also been able to hear, outside of China, that they are now introducing a new Z-20T attack helicopter, and believe it or not, folks, it's an American ripoff. Outside of that information in East Asia, we've also been able to hear that the Russian Federation is now greatly panicking about NATO missiles being provided to the state of Ukraine to be used in further attacks against the Russian Federation, as the President of the United States has made it incredibly clear that tomorrow's announcements on Monday are going to be announcements of significant military support to the state of Ukraine, with the option of liquidations of Russian assets to the tune of billions being considered, which will also be used to provide further military support and assistance to the state of Ukraine in their current struggle against the Russian Federation's armed invasion, which has been ongoing since early 2022. At the exact same time, the Russian Federation is also stating that there has been a little bit of a missile stock plummet, at least inside the country, as it does appear that the large amount of missile fire that's been conducted against the state of Ukraine and the low amount of production involved as well has led to a significant shortage, with Russia's missile stockpiles now being cut in half due to the recent attacks that the Russians have conducted against the state of Ukraine. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that the state of Ukraine has inflicted high casualties on the Russian armed forces over the course of today. Again, as we've also been able to hear, that Ukrainian armed forces are still conducting their slow-moving counteroffensives within the area of Kindrativka and Konstantinivka, directly along the Sumy border, and are continuing to push the Russian Federation's forces back out of the Sumy Oblast. This is coming at the same time as the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has stated that a new government is to be formed within the next week, and FSB agents have been killed by the SBU inside the streets of Kyiv just earlier today in the morning. Outside of that, and in the Middle East, we've also been able to hear that United States Armed Forces have been involved in a small skirmish near to the area north of thery, as it appears that they were targeting and destroying terrorist forces that were existing within a power vacuum region of the Syrian Democratic Forces. This is at the same time as we continue to see SDF and SIG forces building up on the banks of the Euphrates River in Deir ez-Zor, possibly suggesting larger combat and hostile actions which will be occurring between the two groups. Explosions have also broken out in Damascus and inside of Erbil, as another unidentified drone was spotted near to the U.S. consulate earlier today, with that drone being shot down over the Erbil air defense perimeter. The Islamic Republic of Iran has also stated that they are going to be continuing to pursue their nuclear weapons programs, with the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran stating today that they hope in the future to be able to have a nuclear weapon that not only is usable, but also missilery that will be allowing for that nuclear weapon to be used in a tactical or strategic form, even directly threatening the United States. Once again, making it incredibly clear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has wishes and aims for their nuclear weapons program and missile program to eventually create nuclear weapons that could threaten to kill millions of Americans at a time. We have also been able to hear that heavy flooding has hit the southern regions of Iran near to Shiraz, as the United States Air Forces are continuing to conduct further reconnaissance against the country, and we're also hearing of a significant shift of fueling tankers within the area that are moving out of the region and also moving around throughout the region. We have not been able to hear what happened to the multiple dozens of strategic tankers that flew in the Pacific several days ago, which were believed to be heading on their way towards the Middle East. We so far do not have any updates on those particular groups. But we have a massive amount of news to be covering today over the past 24 hours, and I've got to say that tonight is also the Sunday night fundraiser, which is for Nova Ukraine. And we would love to see the Least Spring Army gets behind the fundraiser once again, like it has every Sunday for years now, to get over the fundraiser goal, as it's an incredible, wonderful thing to do, and it helps to save plenty of Ukrainian lives overseas through the Nova Ukraine nonprofit. Outside of that, we are going to be moving on into the news that
we're also about $500. Oh my God, this lag's so bad, man.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Like, I wish the Wi-Fi would fix itself.
Yeah, I would agree. But the fundraiser is doing really good, but it's probably better that we just press on into the news in the meantime, considering the tough Wi-Fi situation. But moving on from that and into the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, we have been able to hear a direct statement from the North Koreans that they are largely willing to go to war with the United States. And that was according to a direct North Korean statement today, as North Korea has stated that it is ready to take military action against the United States. That was published earlier today by the KCNA, and is once again showing us that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is openly eyeballing direct conflict with the United States. This statement has been echoed greatly throughout the course of the day, as multiple nations within the area are of course seeing a heightened level of tension and combat readiness due to the statements by the North Koreans. The Korean People's Army, which exists in the same form as the People's Liberation Army within Communist China, solely serves a purpose of fulfilling loyalty to the leader, which is the Kims or the Kim family, and to also ensure that their objectives are achieved at whatever costs. The military doesn't fall under a specific ideological prerogative rather than strict loyalty to the leader itself. That is largely how the Korean People's Army is structured and how it's functioned since the founding of North Korea in the late 1940s. At this moment, we do understand that, like at any other time, along the entirety of the demilitarized zone are thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, of North Korean artillery pieces that have been set up along the border, along with South Korean and American artillery pieces that are facing each other down and could open fire at any minute. Of course, the chance of an actual ground conflict breaking out within the Korean Peninsula is unlikely. We have not been able to hear any statements of alert or any signs of distress or action by the South Korean government that will be showing us that an attack would be imminent at this point, and we've also not been able to gather any satellite information or data showing any different force posturings of the Korean People's Army that would be suggesting that hostile action is inevitable within the next few hours, but the statements alone are concerning and have started to put U.S. and South Korean forces in the Korean Peninsula on a higher level of alert, while at the same time, the state of Japan is also most likely going to be in a state of high alert due to this statement. It is also highly likely as a result of this that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is going to be attempting to take more aggressive actions here in the near future, most likely conducting more missile tests and launches, as well as the possibility of launches of larger heavy caliber intermediate range ballistic missiles and intercontinental ballistic missiles of the Hwasong variety, which have also been used in the past whenever the North Koreans are attempting to escalate the situation. It is becoming incredibly clear, however, that the sort of peachy diplomatic relationships that we're seeing with the North Koreans in the latter part of the 2010s are certainly not going to be existing through the 2020s, as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea continues to be emboldened in their stance, seeing that further military and economic support is being provided to them currently by their significant relationship with the Russian Federation in the current war in Ukraine. And this is also a statement that is coming on the heels of the Russian Federation's visit by none other than the horse, the foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, which just visited North Korea just yesterday and the day before. We have been able to hear that Kim Jong-un directly pledged to unconditionally support Russia's war against Ukraine, with Kim Jong-un stating that his country stands ready to unconditionally support and encourage all measures taken by the Russian leadership as in regards to the Ukrainian crisis, making it incredibly clear that the Ukrainian-Russian connection is very well solidified at this point, as it's very mutual for the two parties. One of the few times we've ever seen a mutualistic relationship exist between the North Koreans and anyone outside of their country. Largely, the North Koreans have operated as a parasite historically. But outside of that, at the moment, the North Koreans and the Russians have absolutely no reason, materialistically, to cease or suspend their relationship between the two countries. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea is a lightly industrialized country, but the industries that they do have are mostly specialized in production of wartime materials, and especially basic ones like high explosive artillery shells. With this in mind, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is able to provide something to the Russians that is of great value: high explosive artillery shells. The war in Ukraine has proven that while war has continued to advance through the passing decades, at least in this war, artillery still reigns king, and whoever is able to possess the greater volume of firepower, or more precise but large volumes of firepower, is generally the one who gets the upper hand advantage on the battlefield. With this in mind, the Russian Federation has been able to outgun Ukrainian artillery throughout most of the war, firing on average around 50,000 shells a month, while the Ukrainians have been able to average at their best months around 35,000 shells per month. Currently, that number is somewhere around 15,000 shells fired per month. With that in mind, the Russian Federation seeks to keep this disparity, as it is one of the few things that's allowing them to maintain some sort of a stalemate on the battlefield. Otherwise, the lower volume of Ukrainian artillery fires, along with the support from FPV drones, would start to change the battlefield into Ukraine's favor, which we have seen has happened several times in the past with the successful Ukrainian counteroffensives in the Kharkiv Oblast and in the Kherson Oblast during the latter parts of 2022. The only major frontline advances that we saw by either side was when the Ukrainians actually had something close to firepower parity and were also leveraging the use of drones and rapid battlefield maneuvers to be able to get an upper hand on the Russian Federation. We've never seen the Russians be able to pull off something similar, and so far the Russians require this large volume of firepower to just try and make minimal advances. On top of that, the Russian Federation still has a large political objective, at least inside of their country, to attempt to make it look like the war is not that all-consuming. The Russian economy has already been heavily hit, and a decent amount of consumer industries have been shifted into wartime production, but nevertheless, the Russians do not want to make the message that the entirety of the population has to make extreme sacrifices in their already low quality of living, because it would start to show that the war is going quite poorly, and that the Russian state is having to put quite literally everything they have at their disposal into supporting their current war efforts to even keep the war at a stalemate. With this in mind, the North Koreans are a perfect sort of a workaround for the Russian Federation. Federation. The North Koreans know no better quality of life. Most of them live in abject poverty. On top of that, their war industry has been existent for decades and has not really been curtailed or slowed down to any degree, as it was a major factor in Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il's leadership, either through Kim Il-sung's heavy industrialization project and Kim Jong-il's Songun cultural approach that the military is to be prioritized by all means. This means that most industrial production in the country is focused on the production of high explosive artillery shells and other basic forms of weaponry, including small arms, handheld anti-tank weapons, among many others. So for the North Koreans, this allows for them to actually put that industry to good use for once and to give the Russians an unlimited amount of military support. On the other hand, the Russian Federation gets the military support they desperately need, and in exchange, the North Koreans get raw cash, which they usually do not get in large numbers easily due to the crippling sanctions that have been put against them for decades. And not only that, they are also able to secure vital food supplies from the Russian Federation that helps to improve the situation inside of North Korea and helps the government to be able to grip down further on control by making the situation somewhat livable for the North Koreans inside of the country. With all of this put together, I would generally have to say that the Russian Federation and the North Koreans will most likely keep this relationship going until the Russian Federation completely collapses economically. The North Koreans can provide a lot of shells, but one thing that the North Koreans cannot provide is a massive consumer base for Russian raw materials to go to that would prop up the majority of the Russian civilian economy, for example, the major oil industries. With that in mind, the Russians are pretty much doomed to failure even with the large amount of North Korean military support because the economic situation is largely unrecoverable at this point, unless the Chinese got heavily involved. That's the only caveat, and we haven't really heard about any heavy Chinese involvement or supposed Chinese involvement that's going to be coming around here in the near future. So with this in mind, this seems to be the running situation at the moment, and this will most likely be the case until the war ends with a Russian economic collapse. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that according to intelligence sources, they have been able to provide around 12 million 152 millimeter shells to Russia for its war against Ukraine. This has been since the latter part of, the opening or middle part of 2023 when the North Koreans first started to provide military support to the Russian Federation. So since then, it's been about 2 years, just about exactly from that point, and they are able to provide on average about 6 million 152 millimeter artillery shells on an annual basis. If we were to actually do some math, and I'm going to whip out my phone calculator here to make sure that we get that math down pat, and let me make sure that we get that up here really quickly. If they are providing approximately 6 million shells annually, and we were to divide that down to 365 days, that means that the Russian Federation is being provided about 16.4 thousand shells per day of the conflict by the North Koreans so far. That is an exorbitantly large number, but considering that a lot of these munitions have had a very high failure rate, it is showing that a lot of them are actually being pulled out of North Korean storage facilities and stockpiles found throughout the country and have generally suffered some sort of fouling, either of the detonators or the actual explosive fillers inside of the shells. So it seems that this is a highly likely number, considering that North Korea has been producing and hoarding these artillery shells. About a 12 million shell shipment over the course of 2 full years is actually something that seems to generally be the case, at least at the moment. But nevertheless, I do see a lot of people talking about the current situation with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and also the direct threats they've been making against the United States for the joint military exercises that were conducted in the Sea of Japan just earlier today. And it appears that a lot of people are not really that big of a believer that the North Koreans actually would ever follow through with the empty threats that they've been known to make over the decades for the large part. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like about 62% said North Korea is just bluffing now, while 24% said it seems like it's Russian coordinated, and 10% said North Korea is very serious about this and they will probably take actions against the United States. And honestly, on this one, I would say that North Korea probably is bluffing once again because they make these threats all the time. It's not anything new that Kim Jong-un saying he's going to attack the West. That's nothing new whatsoever. He pretty much threatens that as much as Iran threatens that. So I would say they're probably bluffing this time as well. Nothing's really changed dramatically to cause Kim to go berserk, except for him just deciding to do so. But one thing that is notable is Vladimir Putin did weigh into this whole situation and say that he advises the West not to create a coalition against North Korea, because if they were to do that, then Russia might want to step in as well, because of course North Korea and Russia have a defensive treaty with each other to help support each other in the event of a war. So I'm with the 62%. I think it's a bunch of BS. But Enforcer, what say you?
It is a bunch of BS. The North Koreans would not be able to survive the rigors of an actual conflict inside of their country. The military is in dire straits. To give you all a little bit of an idea of the qualitative situation in the North Korean military, although it is technically, I believe it's the 7th largest military on the planet at this point in terms of active service members, in terms of equipment, it is pretty strapped. There's not a great deal of tanks. There's not a large amount of anything, honestly, beyond artillery. And in raw artillery, they actually do have fairly large numbers of towed artillery pieces. But once again, those are not modern and they're stationary for the large part. They have to be unlimbered from their transport vehicle, towed, largely placed into position. The supporting struts have to be extended to where it actually is firmly planted into the ground with 3 points of contact. They then have to load the piece, fire it, and then they have to load it back up and leave. It's not a really quick process, meaning that although they have a very large amount of artillery pieces, and that's the only thing that they technically excel at these days, that could easily be targeted and destroyed by either FPV drone swarms, which are a fairly common modern battlefield tactic, or they could be destroyed by precision airstrikes from above. The North Koreans do not have a lot of air defense, and they also do not have a significant air force, meaning that from the outset, even just the South Koreans and the Japanese would be able to claim air superiority over the entirety of North Korea. Another thing that's also important to remember is that North Korea does not have any military protections by the Chinese or the Russians if they actually started an offensive war against South Korea, Japan, and the United States. Currently, they have a defensive pact that is signed with the Chinese and a separate defensive pact signed with the Russian Federation, meaning that under the current charters of those treaties, they can only come in to assist North Korea if North Korea is attacked, not if they open up a war and begin the conflict. They can join it still, but at least there would be some general hesitancy because the North Koreans would have started it entirely on their own, and neither country would be obligated to get into a major conflict to help support North Korea's specific interests. And the only reason why China and Russia actually have any alliance with the North Koreans, or at least the Chinese, is to create a buffer zone between them and the South Koreans, which are US-backed and supported. So with that in mind, no one would ever have the aptitude or the wish to go into a conflict to support North Korea because they only exist for the convenience of having a buffer zone state between them and the rest of the Western world. So with that in mind, I generally would say that the North Koreans are most likely bluffing. That sort of a strategic situation can be easily understood. And not only that, given the performance of the North Korean infantry regiment in Ukraine in the Kursk and Sumy offensives, they have done terribly, as far as badly as could be imagined. So I would generally believe that the North Koreans would have a great deal of hesitancy in actually going into a major conflict because that was one of their best infantry regiments available that they sent to Ukraine. And even that regiment was largely decimated. Well, not decimated, it was actually destroyed nearly or shattered due to the combat on the front lines. With that in mind, considering that every other unit in the Korean People's Army is in an even worse condition, they would most likely not want to begin an actual conflict with South Korea because that would most likely go poorly very quickly for the North Koreans. So I think they're largely bluffing, and this will create a very tense diplomatic situation at the worst, but I do not think that they would ever follow through with an actual conflict given the weakness of North Korea compared to the greater outside world. Propaganda only goes so far, and considering that their propaganda is largely inwards focused towards their own citizenry, the upper echelons of North Korea most likely understand that they will not be able to pose any kind of significant threat or a chance of posing a threat to the greater Western world at large. But moving on from that information with North Korea and on into China, we've also been able to hear, folks, that the People's Republic of China has unveiled a new attack helicopter today. It is one that you just wouldn't see anywhere else in the world. It actually is defying, at least in the concept, the sleekness and the abilities of the helicopter. It's an insane kind of a helicopter, and I've just never seen anything like it before. I don't think anyone else will ever see anything like it before, because it's just world class. Like it's such a modern design. One would almost call it Western in its origin. Let me show it to y'all. The Chinese have introduced the brand new Z-20T to the public today.
Oh, that's weird. It looks like a Black Hawk a little bit.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? That looks so much like a Black Hawk. It's almost like it's a direct copy of it. I think it is. Let's go look. Yep, Looks like a direct copy to me. Looks like another intellectual property theft sort of a situation here. But look at this. The side doors to the to the passenger compartment has 2 windows and a sliding door. The Black Hawk also has the same thing. The cockpit, very similarly shaped. But you know what's interesting?
It's honestly like they took the design of the Black Hawk and they threw it into ChatGPT and they said, we want it to be a little bit different. So what they did is they added like this pink tint to the windows, and that made it completely different.
Yeah, you know, man, they said we want that Ray-Ban sunglasses glaze, and they said we can put that on the windshields, and they did it because that's really the only difference. Just about. I mean, there are incredibly minuscule differences. For example, the rear landing gear on this one appears to be set up almost like a Seahawk. Let me see if I can show you all a Seahawk really quickly because that's actually the quote-unquote naval variant of the Black Hawk. So let me see really quickly if I can find that here. It should be in here somewhere. Oh, dang. Ah, yes. Oh, yes. I see you know your judo well. I'm trying to see if I can find this really quickly. You know what? I think I'm just going to have to type it in. The Seahawk helicopter. Let me go type this in. So you see that the rear landing gear is actually identical to that of a Seahawk, at least in this picture. Honestly, it looks like a ripoff, like it even has this little attachment here right next to the intakes for the jet engines that actually run the helicopter propellers or the jet turbines. It has that very same, everything about it is identical. Every single thing about it. It's a little bit crazy, though, to hear this. This is what's the craziest thing about it. They're claiming that this is their new attack helicopter. And if y'all know much about the Black Hawk is primarily a Army utility helicopter. It's not really made to be an attack helicopter. The Chinese actually have a belief or a premise, at least within the People's Liberation Army currently, that every single helicopter, including utility helicopters like a Black Hawk style design, should also be able to serve a dual purpose role of being attack helicopters as well. Generally, from what we've seen in real practice, then this ends up becoming a jack of all trades, master of none sort of a situation, especially in the helicopter world, as it was generally understood way back when helicopters first became a usable concept in the armed forces, that there needs to be a separate classification for attack helicopters in particular, and a specific design for those helicopters to be more suited to the combat role. Utility helicopters can be used in a last-ditch effort as an attack helicopter. There are examples of them being used in the U.S. Army for some forms of fire support, but in very rare instances. But these are not designed. This design is just not made to be an attack helicopter. One, you would have to literally use it as a solely made attack helicopter if you actually wanted to do that. There would be really no way, or at least the means, to be able to transport troops, and then also the Chinese ripoff of the Hellfires as well on the same helicopter. It generally would start to become overloaded, or you would have to carry a reduced amount of infantry to make room for those missiles, at least in the weight distribution. On top of that, why in the world would you land an attack helicopter in an active battlefield and drop off? It just doesn't really make that much sense from a doctrinal level. It makes a lot more sense to actually have completely separate helicopter classifications and different uses for them, because that is what the United States, which is pretty much the premier helicopter doctrinal armed force in the world, has done to this day. And while we've experimented with this mixed utility sort of a helicopter, it doesn't really work out well at all in practice. So that's generally why you would see, for example, in the air cavalry, which is a very big thing here in the U.S. Army, you would see that there would be attack wings of the air cavalry and then transport wings that use Black Hawks. So that way you don't end up having a situation where the attack helicopter has got to have an identity crisis as to whether it's transporting troops or trying to blow up a tank. And then these don't really do good at blowing up tanks anyways, because they don't have the specialized air-to-ground radars that most of the AH-64D longbows would have, or the AH-64Es, and there's just a whole bunch of a million other issues that pop up in that process. So generally it's a ripoff. It's not even that good of a one. And on top of that, they're trying to make it into a attack helicopter And that's just not going to work out all too well. So it's a ripoff, and they don't even really know how to implement the ripoff well. So that's generally the summary of what we have coming out of the People's Republic of China from today. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear some other significant news coming out of the United States, at least about what's coming down the pipe at the moment, about the United States' further involvement in the Ukraine war. And this actually leads us right into the other major big-ticket piece of news that we have tonight. And we were able to hear that the United States is guaranteed nearly at this point to send Patriot missiles to Ukraine. As the President of the United States on Sunday stated, the United States will send, it's not that we might send, it's that we will send Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine to help it fight off a Russian invasion. We have also been able to hear an additional statement that the President is also now considering the seizing of nearly $5 billion in frozen Russian assets abroad and redirecting the funds to Ukrainian armed support, according to a CBS News report. He has also stated he has access to $3.85 billion left over from the prior administration, which could also be used for military aid. We have also been able to hear on top of that apparently there's now a reason that's being given for the stoppage, at least according to the Wall Street Journal, for the temporary stoppage of Ukrainian military support that happened from the Department of Defense several days ago. As we were able to hear that the Pentagon policy chief, Elbridge Colby, is pushing for a China-first military strategy, which triggered a pause in arms shipments to Ukraine. His classified memo to the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, warned U.S. stockpiles were strained, sparking controversy until the president reversed course. That's at least the public statements at the moment that are being made about the pause of Ukrainian military aid that happened for about a day's length when it occurred, but it seems as though at the moment it's the blame is now being put on Elbridge Colby for wanting to go for a China first sort of a military strategy where most U.S. forces and efforts are focused towards the Chinese and not focused towards hot points that are currently ongoing like Eastern Europe as well as the Middle East. But it does appear that many people have been talking about this, or whether or not that is the case. One thing I will say, though, is that if that was the general policy being put forward, it doesn't really make all that much sense. To criticize, if we're to go with this, and we have to take it at face value, folks, because it's the information we have at the moment, if we were to take that as the general analysis, I would say that Elbridge Colby's position needs to be reassessed, and he possibly needs to be moved into a position where his qualities would be best represented, because it doesn't really make all too much sense, considering that at the moment we pretty much have had an ongoing conflict in the Middle East recently, and there is an ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe with a high likelihood that it's going to bleed over into the rest of Europe, to then go, we have two active conflict zones at the moment, let's take all of America's firepower and attention and put it into the one area right now, out of the three, where there is not an active conflict going on right now. That doesn't really seem to make all that much sense to me. That's like saying, oh look, that whole block is on fire, quick, let's send the fire department 3 blocks down where there's no fire, because there could be one to pop up down there. Doesn't really make all too much sense, if you see where I'm coming from. Now, I would have to say that out of these 3 countries, the Chinese do pose the biggest threat to the United States in the future. But when a fire is burning down 2 out of the 3 houses on a street, you generally tell the firefighters to try and put down the fires in the 2 burning houses, and then wait to put out the fire in the 3rd one, if it ever pops up, for later, when you have the time and the ability. Right now, we have 2 major conflicts going on in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe, and I believe that should be the U.S. Department of Defense's primary focus, at least for direct, immediate support and attention, with a very heavy emphasis on further future support and attention being put into Eastern Asia. I'm not at all one saying that East Asia is not a hot point or a future flashpoint for major foreign policy decision-making. This is an inevitable flashpoint region at this moment, and it's really a ticking time bomb for right now. But at the same time, that does not mean that we need to be there 2 years in advance of when it really will start to become a serious situation, and let every other house on the block burn to the ground in the process, to just wait and see when this one might kick off. That doesn't really make all too much sense to me, and I would have to say it's that's something that I think it should require Elbridge Colby to be moved to another position in the government if they favor them, and if they don't favor him, maybe to remove him and replace him with someone else. That would be my general opinion. But I do understand that a lot of people are talking about this record arms package that's going to be sent to Ukraine here soon and what they're thinking will happen, whether it'll happen or not. And of course, it largely is a countdown to the next 20, well, not even the next 24 hours, it's really the next 12 hours at this point to see what the statement from the president's going to be. Are we actually going to support the Ukrainians this time, or is it going to be another statement of we'll wait 2 more weeks and then see? Who knows? But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we are hearing statements coming from top U.S. officials claiming that a record arms package for Ukraine is coming very, very soon from the United States for Ukraine, and will it actually happen? So about 58% said yes, it will happen 100%, while 27% said it's a 50-50 chance of it happening, and 8% said no, it will not happen. And it's getting a little bit interesting here because at first it started out with the U.S. president saying that he's going to start supporting Ukraine, and now it's turned into a record arms package potentially going to Ukraine. So currently, to give you the numbers, about $3.8 billion are still left in the presidential drawdown authority to send to Ukraine. Also, another possibility is to once again liquidate all these Russian forfeited assets and to sell that and then give those proceeds to Ukraine, which would be roughly about $5 billion or so as well. So we could be looking at a very, very large package coming up very soon. If all that money is liquidated and also all this aid is sent to Ukraine in one big fell swoop, it could be one of the biggest arms packages we've seen in a very long time. And I'm honestly leaning toward the 58%. I think it's very likely that it's going to happen. And now to say a 100%, I don't know. Like 100% in this political environment is a little bit tough to say. That would be taking a very large leap of faith. I'm not really a one for taking that big of a leap of faith at this very moment. So I'm going to say it will likely happen, but I'm like 90% certain about it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, man, I gotta say for one thing, man, why in the world is it when the power like flickers off for literally just a minute or two, it just completely screws up the Wi-Fi for like the next day? It's a good thing it happened on a Sunday.
It's got me fuming, man. I'm trying not to show it, but it's got me fuming.
Yeah, because like right there, man, you like your last word just cuts off, or it takes like 5 minutes for you to hear what I'm saying. It's a very annoying thing, folks. Like it's annoying for both of us on air, and sorry that y'all have to deal with that a little bit as well. But beyond that, I would have to say that at least in my opinion at the moment, I think that it's going to generally happen. I would generally be with a 59%. I might end up having to eat my foot tomorrow on this one, but I generally think it's going to be happening 100%. There's a lot of reasons at the moment for the United States of America to support the state of Ukraine. We're not going to go into all those reasons. We went into one of them at the end of the last night's stream, but I have a feeling that the United States is going to be pretty gung-ho in supporting the state of Ukraine from this point on. Now, I don't know if we're going to be seizing and liquidating Russian assets. That seems to be an obstacle that not even the Europeans really want to tackle at the moment, at least in any major way to support the state of Ukraine. So I would generally have to say that for the moment, I think that we're just going to see some significant support to the tune of billions, but we won't see anything further beyond that, like the liquidation and seizure of Russian assets, finally, after 3.5 years. That was heavily spoken about in the prior administration and was never done. And we do know that the current administration is now bringing it up as well, but considering that the last administration never seemed to want to jump that gun, I'm not really sure if the U.S. will also want to jump this gun as well in the current administration. So I hope that does address that for the best we can. And with that, it is time for us to move on into a little bit more news, as a matter of fact, because it does appear that the Russians are already directly responding to the situation, at least at the moment, as we have been able to see that the Russians are starting to panic about this future support. We have been able to hear that, at least according to one Russian milliblogger, this is a fairly large one, that the enemy is planning an attempt to strike deep into the rear regions of the direction of Moscow and Tatarstan. That's actually where Tatar sauce comes from, if y'all don't know. How do they make Tatar sauce? You don't want to know. But using 300 to 700 drones, storm missiles, or storm shadow missiles, the Russians are not really great at the whole literacy thing. Neptune anti-ship missiles and other long-range systems. In case of alarms, take precautions. But it appears that the Russians are getting incredibly concerned that Western weaponry, which may be provided in mass here very soon under the current administration, may start to cause a changing situation for the Russian Federation in the current conflict that's going on right now, and cities like Moscow and the regions even farther beyond, like Tatarstan, may start to come under direct attack. Some of y'all are wondering, where the hell is Tatarstan? What is Tatarstan? Tatarstan is this oblast that houses the city of Kazan. And really quickly, Here we go. Here is the Tatarstan Oblast. It houses the city of Kazan, and it also houses the larger cities of Nizhnekamsk and Naberezhny Chelny, which have been significant targets for Ukrainian attacks in prior days. This is an oblast that is actually pretty deep into the Russian Federation, and if we were to measure it out from the Ukrainian border, the city of Kazan itself is about 700 miles away. A storm shadow making it that far? Highly unlikely. But a storm shadow making it to Moscow? That's not too unlikely. Moscow is only about 335 miles away, and a storm shadow hypothetically might actually be able to reach that sort of a distance and hit the city of Moscow if they wanted it to. So with that in mind, the Russians may be getting greatly concerned that the future U.S. support, along with European support, may start to change the war back into Ukraine's favor, considering at this point it's largely a war of attrition, and whoever's able to destroy the most war industry is the one that's largely coming out on top at this point, at least as far as the long run scenario is going. But a lot of people have been putting in their opinions and statements on this, and this is also coming simultaneously as Ukrainian intelligence is stating, and once again, folks, I do want to give the caveat that Ukrainian intelligence is always stated by Kirilo Budanov, and he's not always been known as the most credible source of information out there, so take it with a grain of salt. But according to Kirilo Budanov, Russia's advanced ballistic missile arsenal has shrunk by nearly 50% since May, and the drastic depletion includes hundreds of Iskander-M and North Korean-supplied KN-23 missiles, with the KN-23s pretty much being a license-produced variant of the Iskander. It does appear that at least at the moment, the Russians could have this attack happening at no worse of a time, considering that they will not have the means and numbers of missiles to be able to retaliate as heavily if we're taking Ukrainian intelligence at face value, which I do want to keep in mind. Just want to make this clear. Kirilo Budanov, over the past 3.5 years of news coverage that we have made, I would say that about 70 to 80% of his comments end up being false, and they're not even grounded in reality. I just want to make that a little bit clear. So while we have to take a statement like that at face value for news coverage reasons, as far as we're covering the news right now tonight, I also have to give you all the caveat that it's a high likely chance that may not be true. It may be lower than that. It may be higher than that. There's no way to know. But beyond that, a lot of people have been talking about this great concern that the Russians have of being attacked with NATO weaponry here in the near future. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we are hearing from Russian sources. They're claiming that Ukraine will soon attack major Russian cities, including the capital of Moscow, with advanced NATO weapons, long-range missiles, and Storm Shadows and Neptunes. And what are your thoughts? 62% said Ukraine is likely planning to do so, while 17% said it's a 50-50 chance of that happening, and 16% said Ukraine wouldn't go that far. And it depends on the size of the aid package, and also depends on what type of weapons are being sent to Ukraine. And also another variable is the West going to give Ukraine the permission to strike Moscow with these advanced weapons? That's the big question. If that permission is given and Ukraine has that at their disposal, then I strongly believe that Ukraine probably will do that. They'll probably strike Moscow, and they'll probably strike many other large cities as well. Now, of course, they'll be striking military sites. They're not going to start attacking civilians. At least I don't think they would. And they're going to start striking military sites near these major cities. And this has got the Russians panicking like crazy. Like you saw there on those Telegram posts, they are freaking out. And they are thinking this is seriously going to happen sometime in mid-August to September. So it looks like it's likely going to happen. And I'm with the 62%. I think it will probably be so. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that in my general opinion, I think that it may be highly likely the chance that we are going to see that the Russian Federation is going to get attacked by longer range munitions, including Western munitions, here within the near future. We do know that at the moment, the U.S. position on the Russian Federation is changing drastically, at least according to the statements we have so far, and I believe that that's going to result in the state of Ukraine taking full advantage of that and striking the Russians with whatever they have at their disposal, including ATACMS, Storm Shadow, Scalp EGs, and any other weaponry that may be provided to them in between now and the future that may have not been provided to them so far. I also see some people talking about the statements I made on Budanov and saying that most of what he says is untrue, and then some people were saying that his job is counterintelligence or misinformation. His job is not misinformation, at least as far as the statements that he's making here. I don't know if a lot of people know how his job works, but as the general intelligence chief, his job is to pretty much manage the people who do all of the counterintelligence and all of the intelligence gathering. He's not the one who's actually out there, climbing around through a Russian server bank gathering vital information on their systems and abilities. That's someone else, if anyone else is even doing that at all. His job is generally to run the organization. And he says stuff that is just absolutely BS. And the reason why I have to make that a little bit clear is because if he was wanting to mislead the Russians, the statements he's making never mislead them. Like, for example, they're going to blow up the ZMPP, it's going to happen tomorrow, and everyone's going to get irradiated. That didn't do anything because the Russians were going to blow it up. They already had plans to blow it up, just like they had plans to blow up the Novikakhovka Dam at the southern end of the Zaporizhia Reservoir. That's the only statement that I've actually been able to observe that that Budanov made that ended up being factually correct, was that the Russians were going to blow up the Novikakhovka Dam. Since then, none of the statements he's made have ever been true, and they haven't been misleading the Russians or helping the Ukrainians to get an upper hand due to his information. He has just been misleading everyone else in the Western world as to what the situation really is and what's happening. I mean, just recently, he went with this off-the-cuff statement that was just absolutely ridiculous, because while Putin was on the phone with the president of the United States telling him that they aren't even going to talk about ending the war anytime soon and they're going to keep the war going no matter what, Budanov was out there saying there's actually a chance that a peace could be achieved here by the latter part of the summer with the Russians, and talks aren't stopping at all anytime soon. And that was just blatantly wrong. I mean, you can clearly look at the situation right now and see that that was blatantly wrong. It's like if he's telling the public here in the West what the Russians plan on doing, he's not misdirecting the Russians. Like, it's not giving the Ukrainians any benefit in the conflict to do that. He's just lying to people here in the West, and making the Ukrainians look like they don't know what they're talking about. And honestly, with him at the head of the intelligence helm, I really don't know if they know what they're talking about or not, because he just says goofy stuff. On the other hand, though, the Ukrainian SBU has been able to pull off some pretty wild operations like Operation Spiderweb and so on, which are the operations that he is in charge of, and those have done incredibly well. But as far as him able to ever say anything credible to the West or to Western journalists about the situation, it is a shot in the dark with him. May as well not even count on him for any factual information at all. You could count on anyone else. Rustem Umarov, Zelensky, anyone. Like anyone else in the Ukrainian government, they're generally credible with the kind of information that they give. On the other hand, with him, it's a very questionable sort of a thing. But with that, I hope that addresses well what I was meaning, and also how his job works, because the lies he tells to Western reporters have nothing to do with helping Ukraine win the conflict. They're just lies for lies, I suppose. Or he just doesn't know and he's giving answers because he feels like he can. So with that, we are going to be moving on from that little rabbit hole, and we are going to be moving on into some more information, as I do have to tell y'all, quite unfortunately, the German government wanted everyone in the world to know today that they are not, I repeat, they are not going to be sending Taurus missiles to Ukraine. At least from what they're saying today. Germany will not deliver Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine, despite a wave of recent Russian air attacks and a renewed request from Kyiv. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius told the Financial Times. This might
Now,
not.
how can that be? Because I thought the general just came out yesterday and said that the weapons would be there by the end of the month. So how are they saying now they're not going to send the Taurus? Because the general seemed to be alluding to long-range missiles, which that would be the Taurus most likely. So that seems to contradict that.
I think this might be some form of disinformation on this one, because we also heard in the past that the U.S. was never going to give the Ukrainians AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles, and that was in the middle of them giving those very missiles to Ukraine. So I think this might be another form of disinformation put out by the Germans of a similar vein. Because the fact that they wouldn't give, that just doesn't make any sense at all. I think that these are going to be given to them. It's just that they're trying to keep the public scrutiny of it and the possible diplomatic escalations with the Russians on a low key, and not officially confirm that they're going to be giving these. Because beyond that, it doesn't really make all too much sense lining it up with all the other statements that have been made that would be true or not. So with that, I hope that addresses that well, in my opinion, but I think that this is largely a disinformation campaign at the moment about the fact that the Taurus is most likely going to be sent to Ukraine here soon by the Germans. If it isn't, we're going to have to ask what's going on with the Germans. Why don't they want to give this? This is their equivalent of a Storm Shadow. It's not like it's got any kind of secret sauce in it that the Russians wouldn't have already seen in a Storm Shadow or a Scalp EG. So why are they so hesitant about giving these? I wouldn't really know. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on from that little bit of news, at least inside of East Germany. And it's time for us to move, well, sorry, I said East Germany. I mean, the eastern part of Germany. East Germany doesn't exist as a country anymore, hasn't for a long time. But with that, it is time for us now to move on out of the East German, or the news out of Eastern Germany, and on down into the Middle East, because we actually have a decent amount of developments that have also been going on down here today. But before we get on into that news, I do have to say that the fundraiser has made it to a whopping $1,920 already, which means that we're only $580 away from the fundraiser goal of $2.5 thousand. So please, folks, please make sure to support the fundraiser. We have to hit the goal. The Least Spring Army has never missed a fundraiser goal in the history of the channel. And hopefully, we'll be able to hit it again tonight and continue to support Western American interests around the globe through the amazing nonprofits that we are able to support through the YouTube Give program. And so with that, it is time for us to move on into the Middle Eastern news, as we have been able to hear something that was made quite clear today by one of the highest up officials inside of the Iranian government. This is Iranian member of parliament Abolfazl Zohrivan. There we go. Very hard name to pronounce. But he stated that they are going to be making a nuclear weapon. And I'm not going to show the clip, but I'll show you all the direct statements. Let's see. Here you go. I'll just read it for y'all. I won't play the video because I'm not really sure if these people, they're Iranian. I'm not really sure if they're going to copyright this or if their copyrights are respected here in the West. So I'll just read the transcript on the bottom. Back in the day, I believed, and I still do, that we have always needed some sort of deterrence. We still do, with regard to producing a nuclear bomb or a weapon of mass destruction in general. I'm against that for ideological and religious reasons. I believe that many in the Islamic Republic share this opinion, and this is why he declared it to be prohibited. However, we need to pay attention to being on the threshold. I've always supported and still do and will continue to support meeting the threshold criteria. In other words, we need to be in a position that if we make the decision, we can respond to a nuclear attack in the shortest time possible. Threshold status means that if I make the decision, I can turn my knife into a sword. In other words, if they attack me, I can respond in less than 48 hours. We are living in a dangerous world that might turn to a nuclear bomb in order to deny us our other capabilities, and maybe even bring us to surrender. Therefore, we need to be on the threshold at the highest possible level so that we can make as many nuclear bombs as we want in less than 24 hours, and respond to what they do or if they threaten Iran. Tactical nuclear bombs are considered to be weapons of mass destruction, right? No, they are considered to be a subcategory. Well, this guy must be stupid than this politician here, because if it's a subcategory of a weapon of mass destruction, that means it's a weapon of mass destruction. That's like saying a fish isn't an animal. You know, like it's like, well, it is an animal. It's just a fish, but that's still an animal. No, they are considered to be a subcategory because they are meant for a specific target. That does not matter. It's a subcategory. Therefore, we can equip our missiles with tactical nuclear weapons. But as you can see there, it's quite clear that the Iranians, at least from their members of parliament, they are still largely pushing for the development and implementation of weapons of mass destruction inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the continuation of their nuclear programs and ballistic missile programs to not only prepare to create a nuclear weapon, but to also produce a missile that will be able to directly reach the United States and threaten millions of lives at a time. The politician or member of parliament from Iran who was speaking in that video is not of the highest intelligence, and generally would be considered to have a parallel intelligence to that of a goldfish. Nuclear weapons are classified as weapons of mass destruction because while they target a specified area, it's a weapon that produces a mass amount of destruction within that specified area. making it a weapon of mass destruction. That would be like saying chemical and biological weapons also aren't weapons of mass destruction, because when you drop them, they only affect a specific town or an area. That is still a weapon of mass destruction. It's just that that guy's a little bit too stupid to know that part. Beyond that, however, it is still incredibly clear that the Iranian government has a great deal of aptitude and desire to continue to pursue those kinds of weapons of mass destruction and eventually try and field them, or at least be on the very cusp of fielding them at any given moment in time. So it's incredibly clear they are still working towards producing and using a nuclear weapon. You can't make it up. Like, everyone in the Iranian government's saying it. So regardless of what other people out there in the world are saying, folks, y'all know who I'm talking about. Folks who say the Iranians are good people and they're not wanting to harm and kill Americans, our enemies, or elsewhere in the world. It's not them. That's just not the case. But we have hit the goal. Hey, we hit the goal.
Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Smashing the goal.
Man, I'm telling you, we smashed that goal. We have hit a goal. We've hit the $2.5 thousand fundraiser goal, and we've now hit $2,652 raised. An amazing sort of a thing. We love to see it, and a huge shout out to everyone who's supported the fundraiser so far tonight and is helping this channel to continue to support American and Western interests around the globe and continuing to help out the Ukrainian people in their struggle in the state of Ukraine right now. So a massive shout out to all of y'all. An amazing thing and another successful fundraiser. You can still support the fundraiser if y'all want to, but at this moment we have passed the fundraiser goal, so if you also want to take it easy tonight, feel free. It's perfectly fine. But still, with that, I understand that a lot of people have also been hearing about another developing situation in the Middle East, as we've also been able to hear of an explosion in Tehran. This one apparently happened near to the area of Ararat Street, inside of southeastern Tehran. And we are not really sure what exploded or what ended up getting killed in the process of this explosion, but I have a feeling it was most likely another Iranian official that's been targeted and killed, most likely by an unknown intelligence force, aka the Mossad. So we will be waiting to see any further confirmation. If confirmation does come out, it'll be coming out tomorrow. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that the United States of America is still conducting reconnaissance operations inside the Persian Gulf, as flooding has now hit the city of Shiraz, and a decent amount of the city is now submerged under floodwaters within the surrounding area. But still, the United States is conducting reconnaissance flights within the area with an MQ-4C Triton. And some of y'all are wondering, what is an MQ-4C Triton? And it's a really cool little aircraft. It's pretty much a Global Hawk, but the Navy's version of a Global Hawk. I think these things are dripped out, unequivocally. They look sick. But this is currently what's flying within the area. From what we know, its reported altitude is 48,000 feet, giving it about a 300-mile observable range for its optic systems to look around with. So it's been conducting orbits all day, pretty much, over the Persian Gulf, trying to gather intelligence. We've also seen that there was another aircraft. Let's see here. Actually, this is the same aircraft, just different times of the day. I was about to say there was a second Triton. There's only one Triton that's out there at the moment, but they are gathering further intelligence. This is also coming at the same time as there has been a shifting of U.S. Stratotankers within the area. With some of these aircraft flying out of the region, we were able to hear that 3 have left for the United States. Another 4 took off from Chania base, and they were operating over the Iraq-Syria area for the past month, and they are also returning back to the United States. And another 3 KC-135 tankers left Chania base and then headed to Al-Udeid Air Base. So some of the tankers are returning back to the United States, while others are shifting a little bit closer towards the Islamic Republic of Iran, at least at the moment. So we are waiting to see what's going to be developing within the Middle East as a result of this, but at the moment, it might look like there is some sort of a unit rotation going on, as more Stratotankers may be entering the area from the Pacific, and others are making the venture back to the United States over the Atlantic, at least at the moment. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear further news within the state of Israel, as we've been able to hear that the Israelis are looking to push the Arrow 4 missile defense system into service to phase out the Arrow 2 with improved precision and reduced operational costs. Meanwhile, work has already begun on the Arrow 5, which will succeed the Arrow 3 here within the coming years. We've also been able to hear, at least within the area of Erbil, that there has been a unidentified drone from an unidentified force that was targeted and shot down over the city, which we can see in this clip right here.
Wow, it looks like it fell in a pretty populated area, actually.
Yeah, it actually looks like it did. But that's the end of that clip. We actually have a lot more clips as well right here. And moving on from that, we could also see the drone being taken down in the clip right there once again. And we can also see that in the next clip here as well, showing the skies over the city of Erbil. And we see the drone actually getting hit right there by the air defense. And in this last clip, we can once again see the plummet of the drone to the ground. But that's the end of the clip right there, and still very interesting to see. But with that, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of information within northern Iraq, and we are going to be moving on into the area of Deir ez-Zor, as we were also able to see the buildup of further SIG forces around the area of the southern side of the Euphrates River.
يقول لك ما يفرم زمان ما شاء الله تبارك الرحمن.
And that's the end of that clip, but still showing us there are ongoing developments, at least in terms of force buildups around the area. We have also been able to see that U.S. and coalition forces have carried out a major operation earlier this morning against an unknown target to the north of Deir ez-Zor in northeastern Syria, involving multiple helicopters as well as ground elements, with at least one individual believed to have been captured, possibly linked to ISIS, which is still operating within the region, largely underground. We've also been able to hear that there was an unidentified explosion that occurred in eastern Damascus today, although we were not able to hear exactly what that explosion was or if there was any damage that resulted from that explosion. But with that is generally all of the news that we have in the Middle East at the moment. And I was looking the entire time, man. I was like, "Oh, do we have a poll?" I was like, "I don't know," because I was looking for a poll. But with that in mind, before we move on into the Ukraine war news, we will make sure to get a couple of questions in the meantime, and also shout out the top donors because we have done amazingly well on the fundraiser. We've gotten up to $2,729 raised, and that is an absolutely incredible thing. So Matthew, take it away.
All right, so currently we're sitting at $1,920 raised of the $2,500 goal, so we're getting very close to smashing that goal. And actually, it's not updating on my screen right now either, as we've already smashed the goal. So my internet is just crapping out on me terribly right now. But anyways, to call out our top donors of the night, we have a $120 donation from BC Skyman, the largest one of the night so far. We also have a $100 from Hal Rose, as well as another $100 from BC Skyman, as well as a $100 from Nerdo, and also, guess what, BC Skyman once again. And then we have a $100 from Ted Marshall, as well as a 75 from Old Warrior, and a 50 from Heather Fitzgibbon, as well as a 20 from Rain Roth, and a 5 from John King. And that is our top donors of the night, and a huge shout out to all y'all and all the other people as well for throwing in a donation to help us get to the goal tonight. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I have to say, Matthew, I think that's more so an Apple issue, because my computer isn't really having all of those kinds of problems so far. It sounds like the Apple has been disturbed by the removal of the internet and power.
I think my computer might be being screwed with, actually, because I'm seeing some interesting things on our network here, so I'm not really sure what that's about, but we'll have to check that out after the stream.
We will have to check that out after the stream. But beyond that, it is great to hear all of the amazing folks who did support the fundraiser, and of course all the folks that we were able to call out, and to the folks that we were not able to call out, a big thanks to y'all once again, as y'all make up a large bulk of the fundraiser support. And if it wasn't for each and every one of y'all coming together to support these fundraisers, we wouldn't have been able to do the amazing job that we've once again done tonight, and to be able to support American and Western interests to the significant links that we've seen so far. But nevertheless, with that in mind, we are going to be making sure to go and get a couple of live chat questions, because we have to make sure to get a couple of live chat questions before we move on into the Ukraine war segment in full. But Matthew, what do we have for the live chats?
All right. Also, by the way, people are asking what's the problem. Honestly, I don't want to say it on here because I don't want to give anybody any information. If it does give somebody some information, but our network is showing an unknown device that's connected to it, which I'm not sure what it is, but it's a hidden network. So that's popping up right now. And I'm trying to do some investigating on my end to figure out exactly what that is. It's apparently new that I've never seen before, and it appears to be only affecting my Discord call, and that's it. So a little bit suspicious right there. And also, we had a power outage 2 hours before the stream. That was a little bit odd. It seemed to affect just our area, like right here where we're at, and that's also weird in itself. So I'm not sure what's going on with that, but hopefully we can get that cleared up after the stream. But moving into our first question here, this one goes to AF Kaplan, who said, "How serious a threat is North Korea to the U.S., and is this just more saber rattling on Kim's part?"
It's more saber rattling on the North Koreans' part. It is still a significant threat, at least on a diplomatic level, but the North Koreans make significant diplomatic threats like this often. So it won't result in anything incredibly dangerous or perilous for our position in East Asia at the moment, but it is something that, of course, will result in a heightened state of readiness because we always have to respond to threats from the North Koreans like they may actually be legitimate threats. So I hope that does address that the best we can, at least at the moment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Mason Miami, who said, when we are talking about the importance of artillery, why aren't there modern warships that fire artillery?
There aren't modern warships that fire artillery because it would be near suicidal, at least in a modern naval warfare scenario, because to get a ship to actually be able to fire artillery, you would either have to have a massive gun that was able to fire hundreds of miles to keep it out of harm's way or immediate harm, or you would have to be able to bring the ship in within just a dozen miles offshore, and even still, its range would be very limited and only be able to fire a couple of dozen miles inland. And considering the modern world of anti-ship missiles and also precision anti-ship munitions that could be dropped by aircraft, it is a very suicidal thing to do. So that's generally why you don't see a lot of ships that support in that kind of a role anymore these days, like battleships would have, because it is quite legitimately a deadly situation to try and get into something like that. So that would be my answer. Instead, we actually use Tomahawk cruise missiles that could be launched by ships, or we use Tomahawk cruise missiles that could be launched by subs. Those have about a 1,000-mile range, keeping the ships in safety, but also allowing them to fire at and engage ground targets well within a country, well beyond the shoreline as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I have at the moment. And with that, we are going to be getting to the last question of the segment and then getting on through the rest of the news.
All right, so this one is going to go to Upset Waffle, who said, "I'm about 5 minutes behind in the stream, but what are y'all's thoughts on Germany not sending the Ukraine the Taurus missile?"
I would generally say that it's most likely a disinformation campaign being put out by the German government. It would seem unlikely that they would deny the Taurus missile to the state of Ukraine. So I'm generally thinking that at the face value of it, it's most likely some sort of a misinformation campaign. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and asking a great question as well. While I'm very distracted here about the whole cybersecurity thing at the moment, folks. Sorry about that. But you know, we'll have to wait and see what's going on here in the future. What's going on here with everything else in the background. But with that in mind, folks, it is time to move on into the remainder of the news that we have for the night. And we have been able to hear some more interesting developments. But also, I see, let's see, some people talking about different kinds of things. Let's see here. I see some people talking about VPNs, all that sort of stuff. We have every single security measure that we can have in place, and everything is locked down tight. Like everything's locked down as tightly as it can be. We can't even go any further than the sort of security that we have at the moment on all of our stuff. The truth is that there was a pretty turbulent storm that came through here today in Birmingham. It's been resulting in flash flooding in some areas, like it has been for weeks now. And as a result of that, the power went out for literally just a split second. It was maybe a minute, or much less than a minute. It was really just a couple of moments. And then the power came back on. And since then, my internet's been working a little sluggishly, and it seems as though there's been a lot of issues on Matthew's end. So it might be a computer issue with the internet being cut off, or something along those lines for a time, or the internet might not be working.
It's not a power issue, I can tell you that, because I'll also add this. Earlier today, I noticed we got some suspicious emails from our ISP, which were, I'm not going to go into all the details. We got some suspicious emails, and I didn't click nothing. I just deleted them, got rid of them, and that was the end of it, and I locked down our account. But at the same time, though, something triggered it, and I couldn't get to the bottom of it, so that was a bad first sign. The power outage was a little bit weird, and then right after the power outage, all of a sudden we started having internet problems. I restarted my computer during your talk you were doing earlier. I restarted the whole computer, and I also connected to my mobile hotspot and connected back to the Wi-Fi again, and it's having the same issue on the mobile hotspot, the house Wi-Fi, and everything. So it's not a localized problem. It's something that's much more serious, I think, than we're being led on to right now. I'm not sure really what it is, but I got to try to figure that out.
Well, hopefully it's nothing too serious, but we'll have to wait and see. But with that, it is time for us, folks, to get into the rest of the news that we have for the night. As we were able to hear within the eastern area of Kyiv that a new government is going to be formed by Zelensky within the next week, as Zelensky has stated that he has made the decision. The government may be headed by First Deputy Prime Minister Servadenko, and Prime Minister Shamal will take over as Defense Minister instead of Umarov, who Umarov is now going to be assigned to be in the position of ambassador of the United States of America here in the future, at least according to what Zelensky's saying currently. We've also been able to hear that there was some sort of a shootout inside of Kyiv today, as Ukraine says that suspected FSB assassins were killed in Kyiv today by the Ukrainian police and SBU services. Outside of that, and moving on into the current front lines at the moment, we have been able to hear that the Ukrainians have shown us a little bit, at least in drone footage, of what the town of Kindrativka, which is currently on the active front line in the Sumy offensive, looks like at the moment. It's already been heavily damaged from Ukrainian and Russian artillery fire in the process of originally taking the town by the Russians and the Ukrainians retaking it over the past week, and we can see that the town is showing a significant amount of damage as a result. And you see here the damage is, of course, quite extensive. And that's the end of the clip, but still showing us the heavy damage that's persisted so far. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that the Russian forces were pushed back a little bit further today. The Ukrainians do control most of Kindrativka, and they also are pushing into Oleksivka, just over to the west at the moment right now, and further contracting the Russian lines, at least within this area. Moving on from that and into the Kursk region, we've also been able to hear that the Ukrainian 5th Border Guards Brigade has been attacking, targeting, and destroying Russian forces within this area as well.
Also, by the way, I'm joking about the black van, by the way. That was just a joke. Some people take that seriously. Like, what? What are you talking about? There's no black van that pulled up. That's just a joke. I'm trying to make light of the situation, but this kind of stuff gets me fuming, so I'm trying to make light of it.
I'll be honest, you've made me nervous. It's getting a little bit hard to focus on news coverage because I'm like, I don't know if we need to just stop right now or what. So, with that, we
No,
can't.
you're good. You can keep going.
But we can see them continuing to hit multiple different relay systems. And we can also see the remnants of one of the fiber optic drones there on the front plate of that main battle tank. And we can also see them destroying a mortar and his ammunition as well, which cooked off in the side of the tree line. And we can also see a group of Russians here moving around as well, which are being targeted and hit. And that's the end of the clip right there, but still very interesting to see. Moving on from that and on into our next clips inside the location unknowns, we also were able to see a destroyed Russian T-90M in an unidentified area of the front lines that is clearly thoroughly destroyed. And we also were able to see the Russian casualty report as well. And the casualty report was quite significant, as we were able to hear from Miss Decent, the keeper of the records, that troop losses have risen above 1,200, other categories are rising above their averages, and 263 drones is the 5th highest daily loss, and the 10-day average is 241 drones per day, showing that this is a significant week in terms of Russian drone losses. Outside of that, we were able to see that 1,240 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 3 APCs, 101 supply trucks, 3 main battle tanks, 49 artillery pieces, 263 drones, 1 MLRS, 32 cruise missiles, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. In general, it's been a pretty good day, and it does appear that the Russian Federation has taken significantly high casualties. We were able to see one of these casualties actually getting hit while trying to take a schwimm, and I believe it's the Oskol River. Actually, I believe this is Severetsky Donets. And we can see the drone going into the water right there, and there goes the Russian. Outside of that, we also were able to see outside of the Vovchansk area and then the Svatove front that a Buk M3 surface-to-air missile defense system was targeted and destroyed. And we can see here the Buk M3 system setting up, actually. It's setting up right here in the clip on the edge of the tree line, preparing to operate. And we can see the drone getting closer and closer, the camera nearing to the operational center of the Buk M3's turret. In a second, it's going to hit. And when it does, it cooks. Let him cook. And we can see it hit the front of the Buk right there. And that Buk has been rebuked. That's the end of that clip. But moving on from that and further on down into the area of Toretsk, we also get to see a raid on a Russian position by the Ukrainian armed forces. You see them coming in, I believe it's in a BTR-4. Actually appears to be a CZ Brent. We see some soldiers outside of the vehicle. We now see the troops loading in. We now see them getting the armored car out of the area. I believe this might not be a BTR. I believe this may be an armored car. We can see them making it over the rough roads inside the city of Toretsk as they make their way out of the area.
Все кнопки! Тройка! О, блядь! Тройка! 2 и 3! О, блядь! Рэп включи! Ебало! Пробуй жать еще! Жми еще! Давай я одну! Давай мне! Ключи на пульты! Давай мне один! Говорю, давай один, я буду нажимать! Включить его надо!
And that's the end of the clip, but still showing us the showing us the intense combat action that's going on. Also, Matthew, has the lag fixed itself? It kind of sounded like it may have.
I'm not sure. How quick am I talking this time?
It took about an hour by Pony Express.
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah, sadly, it doesn't sound like it's fixed itself all too well, but the way you responded to slow, it was quick enough. I was like, maybe it fixed itself. But moving on down into the Polohi area towards Tarasivka, we also were able to see additional strikes on Russian positions in this area, and a Russian actually filming what the aftermath of the strikes looked like. And it's toasty down here on these streets. That's the end of that clip right there. And moving on from that and further on down into the area of Vasilivka, you can also see the Ukrainians destroying Russian positions in with some JDAMs. We see the MiG-29 flying high and dropping its JDAMs here quite soon. There we go. And there goes the JDAMs. And there goes the MiG. And here's the Russian position, soon to be destroyed. Or as they call it, deleted. And there goes the position. The position is now gone. And that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that and further on down into the area of Enerhadar, we also were able to hear that apparently, according to IAEA, the sounds of rifle fire broke out through the night, and they said hundreds of small arms were heard, and this potentially poses a threat to nuclear safety, according to Grossi. I feel like Grossi is kind of on the nail. Firefights happening around nuclear power plants are generally considered to be unsafe. But with that, it's time for us to move on out of the area of the Enerhadar nuclear power plant and on up into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1236 of the war. And so without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Коротко про цей день. День непростий. Зустріч з військовими та міністром оборони України. І не тільки про фронт, але й про наші подальші дії. Українське виробництво, діпстрайки, наші відповіді на російські удари. Вдячний всім, хто реально стійко захищає нашу державу, нашу незалежність, наших людей. Говорили сьогодні і про візит генерала Келога. На тижні будуть перемовини про подальшу підтримку. Доручив головкому Сирському та начальнику Генштабу Гнатову представити наявні у нас інформації про російський потенціал і про наші перспективи. Готуємо також зустрічі спецпредставника президента Трампа з керівниками Служби безпеки України, а також наших розвідок. Інформація буде повною. Розраховуємо і на повне розуміння Америкою того, що можна зробити заради примусу Росії до миру. Була сьогодні доповідь голови Служби безпеки України Василя Малюка щодо захисту українських інтересів і наших відповідей російським вбивцям. Кожне посягання на Україну має отримувати сильну та жорстку відповідь. І це буде. Сьогодні ж була важлива розмова з прем'єр-міністром України Денисом Шмигалем. Завтра уряд представить нові соціальні рішення, виплати на підтримку українських мам. Це виплати після народження дитини, підтримка також в перші роки після народження. Є відповідні кошти і для українських школярів, для пакунку школяра та для безкоштовного харчування в школах з 1 по 4 класи і у прифронтових районах з 1 по останній класи. Завтра Кабінет міністрів України представить всі деталі. І також сьогодні ми обговорили з Денисом наші кроки, наші стратегічні кроки для трансформації виконавчої влади. Зміни будуть, зокрема, в сфері оборони. У всіх проєктах заради нашої стійкості, держави і суспільства. Потрібен аудит кожної домовленості з нашими партнерами, що реально виконуються. Треба також відчутно скоротити некритичні державні видатки і максимально за рахунок дерегуляції направити суспільні сили заради економічного розвитку. Головне – більше нашого українського виробництва, зокрема виробництва зброї, більше нашої української сили, більше наших власних можливостей. І нові кадрові рішення в ключових посольствах. Наступний тиждень має спрацювати на позитивні зміни в інтересах України. Слава Україні!
Героям слава.
And Hiram Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1236 of the news from around the world. And that's going to be moving us on into the second part of this stream where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And I got to say that so far the fundraiser has done wildly good. We've actually gotten up to $2,844 as of my last glance right there on the fundraiser, which is absolutely impressive and $700 above the fundraiser goal. But we are also going to be moving on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And boy howdy folks, do we love that segment. We love that segment. It's a fun one. It's always a fun one because we get to talk about all kinds of stuff with y'all, no matter what it may be or where it may come from. And so with that in mind folks, it's time for us to get on into that segment. But Matthew, do we have any other top donors to call out before we get into those live chat questions?
So we are fresh out of top donors for the night. But once again, a huge shout out to everybody tonight that's donated to the fundraiser and helped to get us up to $2,844 raised of the $2,500 goal. And that is a fantastic number to hit right there. Some say the best number we've ever seen. And I love to see it as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to say, that is an absolutely incredible thing. Once again, I got to say, and I got to thank everyone once again for supporting this fundraiser tonight and getting it up to where it is. The Lee Spring Army has always shown that's in support of Western and American interests around the globe. And we continue to show that with each and every time we pass the fundraiser goals. And so with that, let's see. I hope that does address that well. And also, someone asked a question. I'm going to answer it in the chat about the fundraiser. Botany File said, what does the fundraiser support and does 100% go to the cause? So the fundraiser supports the fundraiser that it supports. It's listed on the fundraiser as per the fundraiser requirements. I'll quickly show that to you here because this is exactly what y'all would see if you're watching it right now. Well, that's not exactly what you see if I click live. Let me click live there. Why in the world is it not bringing... Okay, so now it is bringing me live. So this is exactly what y'all would see on your screen with the audio muted. The fundraiser supports the fundraiser it supports. It says it right there. It also says it here. Right there. It also says that YouTube covers all transaction fees to a nonprofit website. It also tells you what Nova Ukraine's mission is. It also tells you what I say about Nova Ukraine. And it also tells you how much is raised. So it's not really like it's a mystery. This is something that is run through YouTube's system itself. This isn't like another fundraiser where people take the money personally and then they tell you that they're giving it to something. This is literally run through YouTube's system, and it's set up for YouTubers like us to be able to work. So what we do is that we pick out a fundraiser or a nonprofit to support, and we just pick it. There's a little software interface thing that they give us behind the scenes to be able to do that. We put in all the information that we want about the fundraiser, and then YouTube sets up the bank account, and you throw money in, and YouTube holds that money until they're able to give it over to the nonprofit. This is probably the most transparent and straight up way that a fundraiser could be run on YouTube, because our involvement in handling any of y'all's money when y'all put it in this fundraiser is zero. We never get to touch the money, and this is all being touched and handled by YouTube once you throw it into the fundraiser. So, you know, like, it's a like it's a like every time I see a question like that, I don't know if this person was asking a question in this kind of a vein, it always comes off a little bit offensive to me, because it doesn't really take that much intelligence to look at the fundraiser window and to just click show more and then read exactly about the specific fundraiser, and also read all of YouTube's statements, disclaimers, and so on about how this works. You can also just pull this up and see exactly what fundraiser it's being run for and everything. I mean, like, YouTube makes this as open, transparent, and clear as it can be. So I don't really know if that person is trying to insinuate that this is a scam or something along those lines. But unlike other YouTube channels, which have very questionable accounting for the income that they make off of a fundraiser, we make $0. If you don't believe me, here's the YouTube control room that I see off air that shows, as far as chat revenue goes, we have not made a single cent. On a normal night when we get super chats, that actually shows a actual money figure on how much money we have made before YouTube takes out their 30%. So with that, I hope that addresses that well, but we pride ourselves here on this channel with the open transparency that YouTube's fundraiser system provides, and that's the only way that we've ever run really any fundraiser over the years, is directly through this system and this system alone. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I hope that also lets you all see a little bit of how all of that works behind the scenes, because I always find questions like that, considering that YouTube literally answers all of your questions within the fundraiser box below the video, to be incredibly odd, and it's always tiresome to see that we try and do a great deal of effort to actually help out, and then people want to insinuate that using YouTube's system, there's somehow a scam involved. Like, the honest truth is, I'll just say this really quickly, for 3.5 years now, we have worked at least, because there's 54 weeks in every year, and we've run a fundraiser every single weekend since the beginning of the war. Matthew and me have worked 150 days for free. We work a normal 7-hour and 8-hour day today, and we don't get paid a dime to do it. We just do it because we like to actually think that we're helping out. It easily could be something that we could just avoid. We could cancel fundraisers and just not run them. I'm not going to do that, though, because I think that these are generally a great benefit. The only time we'd ever consider cutting a fundraiser or ending fundraisers as a whole would be if no one is supporting a fundraiser anymore. Then it wouldn't make a lot of sense to run them. But whenever we're running support like this, we have an option. Like, people don't know this. We have an option of canceling fundraisers and just making it to where the channel makes us a living 6 days a week. We only work 5 paid days a week, and then we work a full 7 to 8 hour day like today for free. It's not something we have to do. It's not something we're obligated to do. We do it just because we like to do it. So, you know, I hope that addresses that well. But that's always annoying that we go out of our way to try and actually put money where our mouths are here on this channel, and then there's always a detractor out there who wants to try and insinuate that something's a scam or something else along those lines, because the honest truth is that we don't have to work for free. We're not slaves. We could easily cancel fundraisers, and we could just make this a normal super chat day. Probably never going to do that, but it's still also very disheartening to hear that sort of a thing constantly. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on into the questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So real quick, we do have one more top donor of the night, and we did have a 50 from Botnophiles. And thank you very much for that $50 support of the fundraiser, by the way, and get us up to $3,055 raised of the fundraiser goal. That is fantastic to see once again, and we appreciate that very much. But now it is time to jump into our live chat questions, specifically our Morse code decoders of the stream. Tonight we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, and her royal fluffiness. They said the Morse code says, if you're going to be Putin around, don't be rushing to get Stalin at the peace talks. LLT, LLC.
And shh. That's the sound of money, and you hit it dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I've got to say a huge thanks to you so much once again, to all of y'all in the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps, for continuing to decipher those Morse code messages and getting them right, dead on the nail, every single day. I've got to say that's an absolutely amazing thing, and it's a good thing and a wonderful thing to know. So with that, a big shout out to all of y'all once again, and a big shout out to the anonymous donor who just threw in $100 to the fundraiser. Really impressive stuff, I do have to say. And so with that, it is time for us to move on into the question segment of the night at large. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping right into our live chat questions. This one goes to DecaFam, who said, what will be the next likely flashpoint in the world?
I would say the next likely flashpoint in the world would be East Asia, because there's already been the Middle East has already been a flashpoint. Eastern Europe is a flashpoint, so the next one could only be East Asia, because outside of that, all of the other ones have already become and been their flashpoints. So I hope that addresses that the best I can, because East Asia is the only one that has not popped off in any way yet. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least with what we have at the moment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here. Also, by the way, I don't want to rabbit hole in this too much, Enforcer, but let me tell you this. I'm looking at the packet rate for Discord right now. I'm analyzing the Discord call to see if there's any connection issues here. The average ping is 121 milliseconds. The last ping was 19 milliseconds. And the outbound packet loss rate is 0%. Just for context, if the outbound packet loss rate is over 10%, that's when my call starts sounding robotic. It's at 0%, but yet it keeps throttling, it keeps dropping at random, and there's no documented issues at all with the connection to the Discord servers. So, that's the part that makes me suspicious, is that right there as well. And also, just overall, I'm not having any issues with YouTube. I'm having no issues with any of the document systems I use or anything. No issues with Twitter, but yet the call keeps throttling. Now that's the suspicious part to me. But anyways, we'll have to diagnose that further and in depth later. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to JamFan, who said, do we have any information on these shells actually blowing up guns like the claims we've heard here and there? And I've heard reports that North Korean shells are bad, and any footage of failures.
We've seen some footage of breach failures, but that's generally because of an overuse and overwear on the actual artillery piece itself. I haven't heard of North Korean high explosive rounds detonating within the barrel when being fired, but I have heard a lot of them being duds. Because if you're going to run into any kind of a failure with an artillery shell, the primary failure that you'll run into is a high moisture content inside of the actual explosive itself, which could greatly hinder its abilities to explode once it hits its target. Or there is also a detonator failure, meaning that the actual fuse on the charge is faulty or is corroded due to being stored improperly, and that could also lead to the shell not exploding as well. Those are generally the main things that we've heard about with North Korean artillery shells, and that's led to them having a very high dud rate. And that means that out of a lot of them fired, a lot of them don't end up exploding. They just end up burying themselves into the ground and pretty much disappearing from that point on. And so with that, I hope that addresses that well, at least the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, big shout out to Snow White for throwing a $50 donation to the fundraiser and bringing us up to $3,216 raised. A huge shout out to Snow White for that generosity as well. And also our anonymous donors for throwing in those big bucks as well. We also have another question here, this time from No Commentary, who said, could we maybe have another poll asking for everyone's opinion on the likelihood of a full-scale World War III before the end of this year? And yeah, we could. I'm definitely going to be able to run that one for sure. So yeah, it'll be up in just a second. It's a good question. But Enforcer, what say you?
And that's a great question. We've asked that a lot on the channel, but generally it actually does change from month to month with the prevailing situation. So Matthew's going to make up that poll and hopefully get us an answer here really soon. Also, really quickly, folks, I wanted to clarify because I saw some people let's see. Like I see some people talking about my comments about the fundraiser stuff. My comments were to just say, because then some people are like, well, maybe some people are new, but it's not really like, because you're new, you're that ignorant that you can't read. I mean, like, it's literally right next to the stream. But the point I was making those statements is because throughout the course of every night that we run a normal fundraiser, like, I'll say this really quickly. It's crazy that when we run a normal stream where we just take in super chats, which supports our channel, no one really bats an eye. But the night we run a fundraiser, and we run it as transparently as we can. I mean, the number's public. YouTube handles the money. It's done through YouTube system. It isn't done where we receive the money and then give it to someone else. It's done entirely with us not even touching the money. It's as transparent and as thought out as we could make it, and especially with how YouTube does it. And then people always want to come in and scrutinize those kinds of fundraisers. I don't really know what it is behind that. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But considering that I am not too happy about the internet situation tonight, that sort of stuff irks me because it completely degrades the kind of support that everyone's given over the years and how much effort we do on this channel alone through Matthew Me to be able to do this thing. It's like one, it's extremely transparent. Two, loads of people have supported these fundraisers for years, and we've actually done a lot to help out these people around the world through these nonprofits, whether people want to believe it or not. And three, from our personal end, just speaking on my end, that we work for free. Like out of everyone out there in the world, who in the world works a full free day where they don't get paid? Not a lot of people, and we do that every single week. And I do it not because we're trying to look good, or we're trying to have some sort of a like a neat little sort of a like charitable look. We do it because we actually like to do it. I actually think it helps people out overseas, so I'm perfectly fine in putting in a full 7-hour day and an 8-hour day without getting paid these Sundays, which I could easily take the day off, or we could just run a normal super chat stream, because it actually does help out people. And so, that's what I was generally saying, is that because, no one has to work for free. We do because we like to know that we're helping out people around the world. And we also like to know that this community gets to spend this full day actually helping out on the news that we cover and actually helping those folks out. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So, also, big shout out to The Martian, who threw in a $50 donation, and a huge shout out to The Martian for being generous and bringing us up to $3,286 raised. And a huge shout out to you as well. And also, I want to say this. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody that supports these fundraisers every single Sunday, because even though there's like a handful of detractors out there, there are a ton of very generous people that put their hard-earned money into these fundraisers. And I want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you that do that every single Sunday. And even the people that are new that are throwing in funds to it, a huge shout out to you, because you don't have to do that. But that's very generous. And of course, it goes to a good cause. We pick really good causes every single Sunday that we know we're going to send the money to a good place. So Nova Ukraine is a really good cause. And thank you all for donating tonight through the channel for that, because we do appreciate it. And also Nova appreciates it, and Ukraine appreciates it as well. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Little Bear, who said, how many drones has the U.S. lost over Iran?
The U.S. has lost a couple of drones over the years in Iran, but we have not heard of a specific number ever put out. And sadly, we've never amalgamated a number to say an exact number, but it's less than 10. That I can generally say. So I hope that answers that well, and we are on to the next one.
And we got a question from Rick, who said, have they discovered where the drone came from and what type fell on northern Iraq that we saw in that video?
Unfortunately, we do not know. We haven't really gotten a lot of information about the situations inside northern Iraq with the drones. I'd have to say, at the moment, we really don't know anything about them. I'd have to generally declare ignorance on that. Beyond the drone incursions themselves and the fact that they're getting shot down, we can't really comment further on it because there's not a lot of additional information that's provided about the debris fields, the type of drones, or even the air defense that's managing to shoot them down within the area. So with that, I hope that at least addresses our lack of knowledge or intelligence on that at the moment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, Dustin asked in the live chat, he said, how much money have you guys raised in total over the years for charitable causes? It's over 1.6 million, and that's a lot. Like, I think we've gotten used to hearing that number at this point, but 1.6 million for a YouTube channel, that's big money right there for a YouTube channel. And thanks to everybody in the LSA, we made that possible over several years, raising that 1.6 for various causes. And it's gone to really good causes pretty much across the board, various different areas of charity. So really impressive to see, and also a huge testament to how kind and good the LSA is for actually making that happen for such a long period of time.
And I would have to agree. It's been an amazing thing to see that we've been able to run these fundraisers for years, and not only that, raised 1.6 million, which is an insane sort of a figure to see. And it's only been through the amazing community and the endless work that we spend on Sundays to run these fundraisers that has been an achievable feat by the channel. That 1.6 million has gone a long way to help out folks around the world, quite literally anywhere and everywhere. I mean, we've run fundraisers for the Middle East, for Eastern Europe. We've run them for literally everything, even in support of the Los Angeles Fire Department as well during the wildfires in LA. So we've done a great deal through this channel as the Lee Spring Army. So a massive shout out to all of y'all once again for that. It's a truly incredible thing. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to, let's see here. This one goes to Avari, who says, how many F-16s will the U.S. desire to add to Ukraine's stocks from its own or via NATO allies? And how many could Ukraine support simultaneously, given pilots, maintenance, etc.?
Well, also, Matthew, what are you laughing about?
Oh, I'm just laughing. Like at this point, I'm just laughing out of frustration. I got like terrified for a second about something, and then I realized, oh my god, I'm overreacting. I'm getting paranoid. But anyways, go ahead.
I would have to say, let's see. Could
you want me to reread it?
Yeah.
Okay. This one goes to Avari. You said, how many F-16s would the U.S. desire to add to Ukraine's stocks from its own or via NATO allies? And how many could Ukraine support simultaneously, given pilots, maintenance, etc.?
It's really an unlimited number. Unfortunately, I don't really think I'd be able to answer that question all too well, because with the amount of support, it's really dependent on the political environment in a lot of these countries through the future, and that's a really hard thing to ascertain at the moment. But Ukraine can support and fly an unlimited number of them. It's just a requirement of conscripting the needed troops and then training them into those fields. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also people are laughing, laughing in my chat. No, I wasn't laughing at anybody. I had gotten a message from someone that I know that said some insider information, and my brain wasn't like functioning all the way. And I was like, huh? I was like, how'd they hear that? And I realized, oh, they heard it through the chat. That's how they heard that. Anyways, I got paranoid for a second because my mind's all wrapped up and stuff and everything. And I heard that and it like sent my brain into overdrive. But I was laughing at how bad I overreacted behind the scenes. I'm just laughing at myself. I'm a little bit nuts at this point. But anyways, jumping into our next one. This one goes to David. He said, did you see the video of the head of the Pentagon doing a video about drones? And yes, I did. I saw that personally. It is what it is. The drones that were in the video were actually drones that you could purchase. They were like Skydio drones and things like that that you could purchase on the internet. So it's not exactly like proprietary, I don't think, for the Pentagon or the military, but it was pretty cool. But it was also, honestly, a little bit cringy at the same time. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd honestly say that it was actually quite cringe. I didn't really like it too much. I feel like the presentation could have been a little bit different, where maybe as far as the video making side of things, I feel like it would have been better to just have the Secretary of Defense in an office or really making a speech and then cutting to videos of drones being used in the field, because it wasn't exactly like it was a giant drone swarm that flew behind them. It was literally like 4 drones with the drone operators behind them. I was like, I feel like it could have been done a little bit better. Generally, the presentation was cringe, but I like the idea of implementing drones en masse in the military. So generally, I like the concept, but the presentation it could have used a lot of improvement. But with that, I hope that addresses that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here, also someone is saying right here, they said it's very cringe, off-the-shelf kids drones. If you look up, Enforcer, pull up real quick the Skydio drone real quick, and you'll see it right off the bat. The one of the drones that was flying right behind his head the entire time. It's very recognizable. You see the camera cluster at the front of it, and you'll be able to recognize it literally right off the bat if you pull it up.
And how do I spell that? Skydio? How do I spell it?
It's like Skydio, Skydio.
Let's see, is Skydio what?
Just punch in Skydio and you'll see it. It's they have one of their top drones.
All right, let's take a look at that really quickly. And here we go. So this one?
Yeah, that was the main one behind his head right there. Was that it was flying around. I'm not really sure what the normal application for this drone is. If you click on the ad on on a separate screen, you might be able to see what this drone was designed for originally. But it looks like an upgraded version of a Mavic or something. It doesn't look like anything revolutionary. When I think of drones for the military for the United States, I think of the stealth drones that are in development by Lockheed and these other companies. That's what I think about personally. But I don't think about these. So, like, these right here are just like off the shelf like drones, in my opinion.
You would think that they would start looking into cheap mass-produced drones that are a one-time use expendable sort of a thing, instead of all of them being high-end, super expensive drones like this.
Do you
Because
know how much this is right here?
like 40 grand.
Yeah, something like that. It's like I don't know the exact cost of it, but I think I saw like it was in the tens of thousands, I believe, for one of these. You'd have to click on to get the exact price, but it was not cheap.
Let's see. Oh, this presentation isn't cheap. I don't see a
Oh,
price
that's
tag yet.
expensive.
Let's see.
This drone allows you to synergize with the battlefield and develop a better picture and a map of the entire geospatial environment.
Dude, that was the most corporate speak ever. I was looking for where in the world you got that from. I was like,
I just came
what?
up with it.
Bro, that was the most corporate sounding thing. Also, why in the world are they taking a picture of a reenactment with this drone? Look, that's like what is that, an M36 up there? Looks kind of like it. And then a couple of half tracks, and then like a M8 command vehicle, and then an M8 Greyhound. Like, what the hell was up with that? Anyways,
So it
also-
has a thermal imaging camera on it, so it's got that. That's nothing crazy though. I mean, I've seen drones that have thermal imaging that don't cost $40,000. They can see. Let's see. It's got AI. Oh, it's got the buzzword. It's got AI on it, so that makes it work a lot. Automate the task. Now, I think the part of the drone that might be pretty good with this one is it can coordinate with other drones, like swarms of these drones. That was pretty cool. And also, it made it look like it's for mapping, like reconnaissance. Is what this drone looks like it's made for.
It does, but it's like the army doesn't really need recon drones. We need FPV drones. We need fire multipliers. We don't really need recon multipliers. There's enough recon as it is already. It's like what we need is that we need something that can actually blow something up. It's like we don't need another recon drone. We need those cheap FPV drones that the Ukrainians are making for like a couple of $100 a piece with an RPG strapped under it. It's like those are what we need. That's what will work very well, because that's showing that pretty much everything on the modern battlefield is obsolete to some degree because of how cheap and easy that kind of firepower can be implemented by a singular infantry squad.
Yeah, I would say so. I will say that camera, this drone looks pretty cool. Like I'll say that, like it does look pretty cool. But like you were saying though, and also someone saying 40,000 is cheap. It's not cheap if you have to start using these things like they're disposable, like disposable rags or something like that. I mean, if you're having to like toss these things away because they're getting destroyed all the time, this thing becomes expensive real quick. And you don't want to be buying high-end drones like this over and over and over that are being used as disposable, because this is some pretty high-end tech here just to be used as like, one-time use.
Yeah, I mean, electronic warfare system in the area, 40 grand down the drain, because like it gets jammed, it falls to the ground. There's a whole issue with that. Then on top of that, if it gets shot at and it gets taken down, 40 grand down the drain. If you do this goofy move right there where you're literally flying in front of a squad walking down a hallway, bullets start flying, it gets hit, 40 grand down the drain. I mean, that's just really expensive. And there's a million different instances where 40 grand could just be thrown down the drain in one infantry engagement. And I know that America is all into spending money, but the thing is that in the modern world, we actually have to have a little bit of concern for the cost. We need weapon systems that can be produced in mass, at least in the drone fighting field, produced in mass, cheap, and very destructive. Not like, it's great that it's a recon drone, but this thing also needs to double down as a mortar round if it needed to, that you can land precisely on target like a Ukrainian drone could do. Because that's pretty much what a Ukrainian FPV drone is. It's pretty much a guided mortar round that doesn't require a mortar. It's just the drone. The drone is the mortar. So that's generally what I think should be done, instead of going for more, hey, let's get recon in the infantry, because we already have recon like this in the infantry. It's already built in. Let me go show you all that. US
Also to put into perspective as well, while you're looking that up, for the cost of, if for example, if the drone really does cost 40 grand, which I'm not really sure about the price, like to the exact like degree, But if the drone costs like 40 grand, that's like four like Toyota Hiluxes that like these proxy forces use in one single drone that's being used as a disposable toy. It's like that's four like actual vehicles, and we can see how Ukraine needs the vehicles. Like they have people like literally raising money to give them these used trucks, so that way they can go into the battlefield. So that's valuable, and for the cost of that one drone right there, that's like several vehicles that could be used on the battlefield.
But I mean, if y'all don't believe me about drones being implemented in the infantry, these are wildly common. The Raven, these are insanely common at this point. These are pretty much in almost every infantry squad that's in the regular army. You don't find these a lot in the National Guard, apparently, but in the regular army, these are apparently in most infantry squads. So the squad already has implemented recon through drones like a Ukrainian squad would have. That already exists. So getting more drones to just fill the recon role and then greatly increase the logistical complications, because if one of those drones break down, you have to supply that squad with some sort of a comparable drone to the one that they're trained to operate. So they have to go get them another Raven, or they have to go get them another one of those Skydio 10Xs. It just makes things more complicated. It's better to just issue everyone one of these, because if they're going to get lost, they're going to get lost. Like in this, I believe these Ravens are not that expensive. I think they're a couple of grand, but they're not 40 grand. So it's like what we need in the infantry, because this would be smart. This would be smart to start converting some of the mortar units, like the mortar squads, convert them into FPV drone squads. They operate just the same as a mortar crew would, but instead of using a mortar, they're using a drone. So you get precise guided munitions out of that group. And it's surefire. It's cheaper probably than operating a mortar unit, honestly, and it's a lot more accurate and effective, at least from what we've seen in Ukraine. So it's like, that feels to me to be maybe an easier sort of a thing to implement and an easier sort of a thing to do than what the Army is doing, well, really the whole of the DoD is doing right now. Because drones are here to stay. Like, drones are here to stay. Drones are not leaving. These drones are as big as an introduction on the battlefield as a machine gun was in World War I. And for that reason, we need to be forward thinking and think out of the box. We're not trying to do the same thing we've been doing for 20 years already, which is integrating more recon drones into the infantry. The Ukrainians are clearly showing that you need drones that possess firepower, that are cheap and expendable, and that's the way forward. Like, based on what we've seen in Ukraine and other conflicts so far, that is the way forward. So don't go for something expensive, and don't go for something really flashy that once again does recon. Go for something that has a camera on it, that can guide itself onto a target, hit it, and then blow up on that target. It's literally a mortar at that point. It's a flying mortar round. Well, a guided mortar
Also,
round.
by the way, something cool as well, since we're on the topic of drones, I heard that Ukraine is getting a new 5.56 cartridge to go in their rifles that is an anti-drone cartridge. Apparently, it's a normal 5.56 cartridge, like a ammo, but the tip of it, when it's fired, apparently splinters off into five pieces of shrapnel, basically, and it spreads out in a pattern, so they can fire it in the direction of a drone. One of the pieces of shrapnel, at least, will snag the drone, and it should destroy it or at least take it out of the sky. And that's a brand new cartridge that the U.S. is sending over to Ukraine very shortly, apparently very soon.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I think pretty much like the purpose behind it is that it almost turns the 5.56 round into a small like birdshot round or something like that. I think that's what it's kind of doing. It's pretty cool though. It's really unique sounding. And I wonder if it'll have any good use over there. But hopefully it will. I feel
like that might be. I feel like that might be like one of those things where we're using Ukraine as like an active like laboratory for some of these weapons, because I've never really heard of that being used like in any type of Western setting. I think Ukraine might be the first country to actually use that. I'm not really sure exactly like which company is manufacturing that, but I'd be curious to know which one it was. But it sounds like it might be like a testing ground for it.
It sounds like it might be. But that would be a good thing to implement, of course, forest-wide, if it was something that is usable. But still, that would be my take on the drone side of things, at least at this point. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, Mandy, what are people thinking about the possibility of world war since that poll has run its course?
So the question is, do you think we'll have World War III before the end of the year? And about 55% said no, it won't happen by the end of the year, and 27% said it will happen by the end of the year, and 18% said unsure. And the fact that almost a third of people, or at least somewhat close to a third of people, believe that it'll happen by the end of the year, that's definitely a lot more people than thought that previously. Because I ran a poll like that about a month ago or 2 months ago, and most people said that it was not going to happen at all this year and probably not even next year. But it looks like that number has gone up dramatically, and people believe that World War III might be right around the corner based on what we're seeing. Now, in my honest opinion, my humble opinion, I would say by the end of the year, we might see a expansion of the Ukraine conflict. But to say World War III, though, like, I'm not sure about that. That would be a bit of a question mark for me. But I see people saying that World War III already started. I would say that's a decent assessment, but it's not like started like World War II. World War II started and it was a slow buildup to it, and then it like a spark happened and then it went berserk, and then the U.S. had to jump into it and everything like that. But this one's a little bit different. Russia's conducting hybrid warfare on Europe and the West. So, that's already a form of warfare right there. We're also doing the same thing to Russia in a certain way or not. We have China threatening to take Taiwan. We have North Korea arming Russia. We have Iran arming Russia. So there's clearly coordination, and there's already some major escalations happening. So I can totally get behind the argument that's already started, but when's the flashpoint? That's the question. There's got to be a flashpoint somewhere, and when's that going to be? And I'm not really sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to go with the 18% that are unsure and undecided, because it really just depends. It really is almost on a week-to-week basis at this point if it's going to start escalating towards it or not. And it's really hard to say because, once again, with how a lot of things are going in the world right now, it's very unpredictable. It's not predictable like it used to be over prior years. It's starting to get into uncharted waters where it's a lot more difficult to predict certain types of actions and statements. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Hayes. Excuse me, goodness. And they said, why aren't all these countries talking tough, liquidating Russian assets?
I don't really know. It's really because it will be taken as a serious escalation by the Russians, and you usually don't seize and liquidate another country's assets unless you're in an official state of war with them, because the United States only seized Imperial German assets after the U.S. declared war on Germany and entered World War I, although we were clearly in support of the Allies up until that point for the large part. So that's generally the reason why, the best way I can explain it, and that seems to be why they're talking tough, but they're also not doing it. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, do y'all think that the United States is going to liquidate the $5 billion in assets and send it to Ukraine? Because I'm hearing the rumors that might actually happen very soon. And obviously taking a step of liquidating assets, that would be a huge step that I'm not even sure if the last president took that step. I don't think he did. Did he, Enforcer? Correct me if I'm wrong real quick.
I don't remember that he did.
I don't think he did. I don't think he actually liquidated anything. He seized stuff, but he didn't liquidate it to send the money to Ukraine. If this president does that, it'll be a little surprising to me if he does that, because I think we have about $5 billion in assets that can be liquidated. And if that happens, that's going to cause some ruffled feathers for sure in Russia, because that'll be a step that not even the last president took. So that apparently is on the table. I'm at least hearing the rumors in the background about it, but whether or not it happens, only time's going to tell. But I think he might be leaning toward actually doing it.
Maybe so. But with that, I hope that addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And we got a question from Avari, who said, who would buy frozen Russian assets from the USA, and how would that even work?
Generally, I believe that it would just be sold at an auction by the U.S. government, or the U.S. government would try and seize the liquid assets and just start using the liquid assets. But I believe that would be the general process, because I believe that's what happened with all of the seized German liners that the U.S. had, like the Leviathan, that we seized from the Germans entering World War I, is that they were auctioned off or just handed over to the U.S. lines and other groups. So I think that's largely what would happen these days as well. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tom Exman, who said, here's a good question, Matt. If Ukraine sent a destructive drone all the way into a DPRK arms plant, what do y'all think would happen?
Reread that one again.
They said, if Ukraine sent a destructive drone all the way into a DPRK arms plant, what do you think would happen?
They never really be able to do that because North Korea is a really long ways away. It's about 4,000 miles away from Ukraine. So Ukraine would literally have to make an intercontinental ballistic missile to hit North Korea. But if they somehow did, and they did blow up some sort of a North Korean arms plant, the North Koreans would probably start to get involved in the war in full somehow, some way at that point, and pretty much put most of their armed efforts towards fighting the Ukrainians along with the Russians. I think that's most likely what would happen. Although they pretty much have to be armed and supplied almost entirely by the Russians, that's still largely what they would end up doing, at least in my opinion. But I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question goes to Scott Wright, who said, what is it going to take for Ukraine to start winning on the front lines?
It's going to take them pretty much collapsing the Russian economy. I'll be entirely honest. I don't really see a future at this point where Ukraine can just start winning massive battles and swaths of land back through offensive victories on the battlefield. So it'll pretty much take them collapsing the Russian economy and the Russian military not getting paid and most likely mutinying against the Russian government for the Ukrainians to start taking any significant amounts of ground. That's what I generally understand at the point. And with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Dalton, who said, how much do you think this next aid package will change the battle on the ground? And thank you, and LSA.
I think it'll start to change it positively, but only slightly, at least for now. They have to get the equipment in there and the supplies, and then they have to start to use it, and then they also have to see a larger amount than just a trickle to really change the situation truly. So it really depends on how quickly the supplies are flowing into Ukraine and how quickly they're able to receive them. But if it's as quick and large as I think it might be, then this is going to have a significant benefit for the Ukrainians on the battlefield, and most Russian offensives are probably going to stall entirely under the volume of fire that they'll be enduring at that point. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to Jacob, who said, can't the USA just bribe the North Korean army with just a few boxes of Twinkie and LSA for life?
And technically, yeah, I mean, you could actually bribe a lot of Ukrainian soldiers with just the offer of food. You don't even have to give them a money reward. It's just food. So yeah, you could actually do that. I don't know if the North Koreans would actually be able to pull that off because their little security services people keep an eye on them for defections and all that sort of stuff. But it's possible. It's entirely possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be a million, who said, do you think that North Korea will attack Japan, South Korea, or the U.S. with nukes or missiles over a military exercise? And then again, maybe they are that stupid, maybe.
I would highly doubt it. We also have the GMD here in the United States, which could generally shoot down most North Korean nuclear weapons fired at us with a decent chance of success. But I generally do not believe that they're going to be conducting any attacks against South Korea, Japan, and the United States. It's going to create an escalated diplomatic situation within the area, and our forces will most likely be on high alert, but it's most likely not going to turn into a situation where it turns into some sort of a shooting battle or a nuclear exchange. The chances of that, at least based off of prior historical precedents due to these sorts of threats, is very unlikely. It's extremely unlikely, around a 1% to 2% chance of that happening. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we have actually reached the end of tonight's stream, folks, at 2 hours and 10 minutes, a fairly short stream. But beyond that, I have to give a massive thanks to the 16.3 thousand people who were here at the peak, and the 130,000 people who have watched this stream so far. I also have to give y'all an amazingly massive shout out for the $3,515 raised in support of Nova Ukraine, which is an absolutely amazing nonprofit being supported by the absolutely incredible Lee Spring Army. A huge congratulations to all of y'all once again for surpassing that fundraiser goal and continuing to show that the Lee Spring Army is in support of American and Western interests around the entirety of the globe. And with that, we will be seeing you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours, or actually the next 48 hours of news from around the world. And if there is a short war summary to make, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that tomorrow. So with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for watching once again tonight, and apologies for the lag issues tonight. Hopefully I will be able to time out by tomorrow night, or by Tuesday night, that is, and maybe tomorrow I'll be also out of timeout and have good internet connection and no more throttling of the Discord call. But anyways, thank you all for watching and all 130,000 people that were here by the end of the stream. And we will see you all on Tuesday night. And thank you all once again for another successful fundraiser. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.